There we go. Ooh, my jig is a little loose. Got one to go here on the old pitching puppet. Reaction style bait, so fun. Welcome back. We are out fishing some mid-lake structure today. It's one of my favorite summer patterns. And I'm gonna kind of just fish a bunch of it and show you exactly where we're fishing on them. Solid fish. That's another nice thing about this mid-lake structure is you can catch some quality fish. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk through just the areas. I'm just gonna fish all this mid-lake structure. And when I catch a fish, I'm just gonna show you exactly where I'm fishing, kind of how to dial in the sweet spots, because this time of year, mid-lake structure is king. There is so many fish on them, but not fish over all parts of it. So I'll show this one off, talk through this specific area, and then I'll talk through some different presentations that I use for specific situations. Oh, there we go. Solid, just a thick fish, probably that low to maybe mid-20s. And what we got going on right here is we're actually just on the edge of it. We're kind of on the steep break of it. There's a high point up beside me. I'm gonna check that out as well. But right here, we just got kind of a steep break and then it kind of shelves off. You can see even just a couple fish hanging out right there, drops off, and there's some of these shelves. And so one of the things I really like about these kind of shelves as well is it seems like that bait kind of congregates on there. You know, they have a little bit of a wall to kind of hang by, and that bait kind of congregates, and those fish will usually be pretty close behind, obviously. It seems like on any mid-lake structure where you can find that, specifically at the right depth. You know, not all these flats, not all these shelves are going to hold fish, but if you can find it at the right depth, depending on what you're seeing, a lot of what I'm seeing out here today is kind of that 20 to 30 foot range is the sweet spot. And so if I can find a shelf or a flat spot in that range, that is going to be money. So this one I was using the pitchin' puppet. As you can see, it's kind of that orange and white color. And I absolutely love fishing reaction baits on this stuff because as you can see, today's a little windy. This trip, it's just been ripping wind most of the trip. And so being able to get down very quickly is key, and just being able to rip these baits in. And for whatever reason on structure, when they see these baits, they will just react, follow it straight down to the rocks. This is obviously a rocky area, and they'll follow it straight down, trap it to bottom, you pick up and it's there, just like that one. So that was kind of how I targeted this one. We're gonna keep moving, find some more fish, and kind of talk through some of the strategies depending on what I'm seeing from these fish. Ooh, there's a big fish. See all that bait, fish. Come on. Ooh, two of them. Even better. For sure gonna get around that one. Stop it. That's not quite what I wanted to happen. We'll see if it sees it. Ooh, there he sees it and he bit right away. Oh, that's what's so fun. Sometimes when they see this, so we're actually off structure this time. You can see there's a bunch of bait cruising around here. And these fish were out kind of suspended. You know, see that a lot, especially when there's bait over. You know, we're probably in a little bit deeper flat and this fish was suspended up off bottom quite a ways. Another decent fish. Just gonna spot lock us here so I'm not fighting everything. And when you find these fish off structure too, they tend to be pretty solid ones. Oh, I'll show this one off, kind of show you what I was using again. Another solid fish. Try to get in the frame there. Man, this one is probably, I don't know, mid-20s. If we get a really big one, I'll measure. But this has been the deal. Whoa, try that again. This has been the deal for those suspended fish. This is a 1/2 ounce Smeltinator jig with the 4-inch paddle shad by Norfin. And man, you could see that as soon as that thing turned on, it was just crushed. And so one of the things I like to do when I'm working these baits is I'll try to cast beyond these fish, let it drop down to about the level that they're at, and I'll just try slow swim, kind of slow roll that right over top of them. And sometimes you'll get fish that'll lazy follow, but when these fish are ready, you'll see them turn on the live scope and you will feel the bite before you even see them attack this bait because they hit it so hard. And with these good strong hooks, these Smeltinator hooks have those really strong hooks. You can just lay into them and you know you're gonna be able to keep them pinned. I have that hump kind of behind me and I just scooted off this edge. It goes from that hump to kind of this anywhere from 30 to 35 foot flat on the edge of it. and you're seeing these fish out over that, kind of chasing some of this bait. But don't be afraid to move off just a little bit on some of those flats, especially if there's multiple humps in an area. Some of those flats kind of cruising in between can just be money. So we're gonna keep moving, catch another fish, talk through what we're doing. There we go. Trapped it down to bottom. This one is not big, but we have more of an eater size walleye. Whoa, which likely get some of these too, but that is, let's see where we're at on this guy. So this is kind of like the high spot of it. So this hump kind of extends out a little way. It's kind of a long and narrow hump, and there's one little high spot. I got off it here a little bit, but I'll just kind of pan around so you can see. I slid off the edge here, but up there, you can just barely see it. Sometimes they hide with the rocks. Up there you can see a few fish sitting up on that little high spot. They're kind of tough to see because they're sitting tight to bottom. They sometimes like to sit on these high spots, is being able to identify that highest point, especially if it's, you know, if the high spot is 10 feet, that might not be what I'm looking for this time of year. But this one, it looks like the high spot is in like 20-ish feet. And that's been kind of a sweet spot because he's 20 to 30 foot range. So if it's in the range that they're at and you can find that little high spot, that is another just kind of sweet spot. Even a lot of times it's a little bit of rock pile up on top of these things. So a lot of structure for them to relate to. But again, this is something that you can do. Yes, I'm doing this a live scope. You can do with 2D sonar fairly easily, is drive over. I'll throw a couple screenshots up of what that'll look like. Driving over, looking for some of those arcs, especially when they're suspended. Something you control Lindy rigs around. A lot of times with live imaging or forward facing sonar, you're not seeing all these fish. So sometimes you might catch more fish just pulling a Lindy rig around because there's these fish that will come out of the rocks or come out of some of these areas. So don't be afraid to just work some of that too, or get to a hump, drive around a little bit, put some waypoints of where you're seeing some of these fish, and then kind of do some fan casting at those waypoints, especially if you can work something like a reaction bait like this and just rip it around, find those aggressive fish. Another great way to work some of these areas. Ooh. Yep. That is so fun. Didn't even quite get to see that guy. We were drifting out of the way a little bit. Doesn't feel huge, but still a decent fish. You can see we're kind of off that edge. We were working kind of the tip of this point, and again, just cruised off to the side and saw a couple of these suspended marks. Oh boy. Get back in there. Oh, there we go. Another Smeltinator jig and paddle shad down the hatch. Oh, I'm so glad that they came out with this 4-incher. I like these like 4 or 5-inch baits when I'm throwing these things. Something to really grab their attention, kind of separate it from all the other bait that's down there. So what I was actually targeting originally is another little sweet spot. There was a bunch of fish. You can actually see some kind of right underneath me here. And what this is like the tip of a point. So there's the high spot, which I caught a fish a little bit earlier. And then I moved down here, kind of hanging on the tip of this point. So it kind of where it goes out, narrows down, drops down a little bit in depth. We're in like 25 to 28 here, depending on where we're at. The high spot, can't remember what that was at, like 20-ish or so. And so working down this finger, again, fish kind of scattered throughout all of this little extension here. Sometimes they'll be right on the tip. Obviously, you saw a couple of those bigger ones that were out off of this a little bit. I'm assuming these are probably like your eater size fish right here, just because they don't look significant and they're a little more grouped up. And you kind of got to differentiate between whether it's a rocky hump, whether it's a sandy hump or a weedy hump. You know, obviously all this stuff is that good shoal rock mixed with some boulders, that kind of stuff. And they're kind of mixed around in in some of these areas. Sometimes you'll see them just high flying up above or on random spots, but these areas that we talked about today, I'm trying to even think of some of the areas we caught, some of these shelves, some of these points, high spot, those are all going to be very consistent spots. So if you don't have forward facing sonar, those are your spots. If you're gonna drive over some stuff and check with your 2D, that's what I would drive over first, kind of check that out. Or if you're approaching something, maybe you do have forward facing sonar, you're like, okay, how do I want to approach this piece of structure? That's a question I get asked a lot. How do I kind of set up for these? So what I'm doing right here is I am set up going into the wind. So there's this point kind of right in front of me. So if I have a piece of structure, the wind's blowing, I'm gonna get myself set up so I can go into that point facing it. That way it's a little easier to control the boat, even with it being windy like this, and being able to make accurate casts on these fish and not blow over top of them and spook them. There it is. Oh, you can see him here on the drop. That's so fun. That is so fun. Oh, I love catching fish on these reactions bait when they just pop it on the drop. Let's see if I can get this guy in without him popping off, and we'll be golden. Solid fish. Oh boy. Oh, that makes me nervous when they start doing that by the boat with these reaction baits. Although, usually when they hit it on the drop like that, they have it pretty good. Sweet. Popped off. Another probably mid 20 or so. This one is kind of high spot to the side of me. Kind of a little bit of a flat. It's kind of a combination of some of these, because there's the high spot that's almost like a little finger sticking off of this, but it's also a little bit of a flat as well. So little combination, but that's what we got going on this one. I'm also really going to talk about some of the things, the situations where I will use different baits. Obviously this is the one that I was just talking about, that smelt leaderhead and paddle shad. This is one that I'm throwing over your fish that are a little bit bigger and a little bit more up off bottom, just kind of rolling it over top of their heads. However, I will say yesterday I was out, I didn't film because it was so rainy. One thing I was doing is I was letting this thing just slow roll over top of these rocks, and you would see fish. Sometimes there'd be fish that you would know were there, but you would see fish come up off bottom and come and just smoke this thing. So you can slow roll this thing over bottom, or even drift over bottom with something like this or a jig and minnow, and that can be very effective. So that's one that I'm seeing there. Another thing that I'm using a lot on these is the one you saw earlier. That was that pitch and puppet, some sort of glide bait. That's perfect. An easy way to catch fish quickly on these humps is some sort of glide bait, because you can get down quickly, you can get these fish to react. And so when I'm throwing that, I'm seeing fish that are a little closer to bottom, honestly kind of like some of these that are right here. Some of those a little closer to bottom, maybe they're up, you know, a couple feet, especially those bigger fish. I will see them chase all the way down or catch it on the fall, but if they're a little bit further up off bottom, then I'm throwing that swim bait. So that is one where I'm looking for like reaction, quick bite, kind of the, I don't know if I guess I would call it finesse, but maybe a touch more finesse that I will throw is one you've been seeing in a lot of my videos recently, is the smelt nader jig and the eye candy minnow. This is something that I can work a little bit more slowly. You know, if these fish are a little bit put off, or if I want to just kind of work it over their head, you can snap it like a reaction bait. So it's kind of nice for an all size, or kind of a little bit of a do all bait. But I can also work it slowly, slow roll it up over top of their heads, do little twitches right on top of them. And kind of depending on the day, some fish will really like this. Sometimes they want more of a reaction, sometimes they want that big style. It's nice, but those three are ones that I really like. If you're gonna use live bait, I've been just using artificials, but if you're gonna use live bait, throwing a slip bobber on these things is gonna be awesome. You know, another thing that I could do right here, and I actually have one tied on, is throwing a drop shot. Drop shot with leech crawler, drop shot with a plastic, even these eye candy minnows like that. Those are all very viable options when you're targeting some of these sweet spots on the mid-lake structure. There we go. Man, took a little snapping, but we finally got him to go. Seems like a decent one. Of course, my net's back here. Nah, nothing crazy. Oh. God. That guy was following along. I don't even think we got the eat on the live scope. Oh. Whoa. My net's all flipped inside out. There we go. One more decent little walleye. And so essentially what we got going on here is, this is a very common spot. If you've listened to some of my stuff before, you know that I love saddles, and this is a saddle right here. And so saddles are such a high percentage area because there's multiple pieces of structure around, there's kind of a flat spot in between, and these tend to like trap bait. They'll just kind of be an area for these fish to roam. If they're roaming around that structure, it's two pieces of structure for them to be by and come in between. On this saddle, a lot of times I find these saddles are kind of this clean bottom like this, so they're very easy to work. So it's kind of just another little sweet spot when you're looking at some of this mid-lake structure. It can be kind of daunting, but being able to pick out some of these high percentage areas are really going to increase your odds and honestly just make you more efficient when you're checking some of this stuff out. And one of the things that I will do is I will use my depth highlight contour on my Humminbird, and I'm going to set it, like right now I have it set from 20 to 30 feet because that's what kind of the depth range that I'm seeing most of these fish. So I'm looking for these bigger pieces of structure that are topped out in that kind of 20 to 30. Sometimes they might be up higher, but if they have a good congregation of humps, even with some of these little bit deeper humps that top out, some a little bit shallower, that's just a great area to be able to find a lot of different groups of fish, finding some of these sweet spots. So also want to give a huge shout out to Matt and Alyssa with Sunset Country Outfitters. I've been coming up here the last few years, staying with them, and they do such a nice job and such a great spot on that private island. So if you're at all interested, I'll put their link in the description below as well. Give them a call. Just an awesome spot on an awesome body of water.